Ezekiel sat quietly, his heart heavy with the sadness of his people. The Israelites were in exile, far from their homeland. They felt defeated, hopeless, and forgotten. For years, they had been scattered in Babylon, their faith growing weaker with each passing day. Even as a prophet of God, Ezekiel wondered how his people could ever find hope again. As he sat deep in thought, something amazing happened. God's Spirit lifted him and carried him to a strange place. When Ezekiel opened his eyes, he saw a vast valley. It was silent, lifeless, and filled with bones, dry and scattered everywhere. The sight was overwhelming. Ezekiel walked among the bones, his footsteps echoing in the stillness. Then God spoke, "Son of man, can these bones live?" Ezekiel looked at the dry, lifeless bones. It seemed impossible, but he trusted God and answered, "Lord, only you know." God said, "Prophesy to these bones. Tell them, dry bones, hear the word of the Lord. I will make breath enter you, and you will come to life. I will give you tendons, muscles, and skin, and you will live. Then you will know that I am the Lord." Though it seemed unbelievable, Ezekiel obeyed. Standing in the middle of the valley, he spoke God's words aloud. "Dry bones, hear the word of the Lord. I will make breath enter you, and you will come to life." Suddenly, a rumble broke the silence. Ezekiel watched in awe as the bones began to move, rattling and clicking as they came together. The skeletons formed, and then tendons, muscles, and skin appeared, covering the bones completely. What had been lifeless began to look like people, but the bodies still lay there, unmoving. Then God said to Ezekiel, "Prophesy to the breath. Tell it, 'Come, breath, from the four winds and breathe life into these bodies, so they may live.'" Ezekiel did as God commanded. "Come, breath, from the four winds and breathe into these bodies, so they may live." At once, the wind stirred, rushing through the valley. Ezekiel watched as the breath entered the bodies, and they came to life. One by one, they stood up, strong and alive, like an army. Ezekiel stood in wonder. The valley, once filled with dry bones, was now full of life. Then God spoke again, "Son of man, these bones are the people of Israel. They say, 'Our bones are dried up, and our hope is gone.' Tell them this. I will open your graves and bring you back to the land of Israel. I will put my spirit in you, and you will live. Then you will know that I am the Lord." Ezekiel understood the vision. The bones represented the Israelites, scattered and hopeless. God was promising to restore them, to bring them back to life and their land. This wasn't just about returning home. It was about God giving them a new beginning. When the vision ended, Ezekiel was back where he had started, but his heart was now full of purpose. He knew he had to share God's message with his people. Ezekiel walked through the streets of Babylon, watching his fellow Israelites. Their faces were tired, their spirits crushed, but deep down he saw something else. A flicker of longing, a desire to believe that God hadn't forgotten them. Gathering a group, Ezekiel began to speak. He told them about the valley of dry bones, describing how God brought life to the lifeless. His words were full of hope and passion. God has not forgotten us. He says, "I will open your graves and bring you back to the land of Israel. I will put my spirit in you, and you will live." Some listened with hope lighting up their faces. Others were unsure. One man stepped forward, doubt clear in his eyes. "How can this happen?" he asked. "We've been in exile for so long. Our land is gone, our temple is destroyed, and we're scattered everywhere. How can God restore us now?" Ezekiel looked at him with confidence and replied, "The same God who brought life to a valley of dry bones can bring life to his people. It's not about our power, it's about his spirit. Do you remember how he parted the Red Sea? How he led our ancestors through the wilderness? God's promises haven't changed." The man's expression softened as he thought about what Ezekiel said. Around him, others began whispering, remembering God's faithfulness in the past. Slowly, the mood began to change. Despair gave way to a small spark of hope. Ezekiel knew his work wasn't finished. Many still doubted, and much needed to be done. But he also knew that God's Spirit was moving among his people, stirring their hearts. In the days that followed, Ezekiel continued to share God's promise of restoration. Little by little, hope began to grow, and the dry bones of Israel's spirit started to come back to life.